9 of the most experienced hikers in the Soviet Union pitch a tent on a frozen mountainside. Hours later, every single one of them is dead. Not from a fall, not from an animal, not from anything that should exist on a quiet, empty slope in the middle of nowhere. They cut their way out of their own tent, from the inside, and ran into a night that was 30 degrees below zero. Most of them weren't wearing shoes. Some weren't wearing coats. One had no eyes left in his skull. Another skull was cracked open, with a force investigators compared to a car crash. And there was no car anywhere near that mountain. For over 60 years, Russia has never been able to explain what happened on that slope. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why. Even professional investigators eventually stopped trying to give an answer. It's January 1959. A group of 10 experienced skiers and hikers, mostly students from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, set out on a serious winter expedition. Their goal, Ural Mountain, deep in the Russian Ural Range. This isn't a casual weekend trip. Every member of this group has serious wilderness experience. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, is 23 years old and already known as one of the most capable young expedition planners in the region. This is exactly the kind of group that survives the Russian winter, because they know exactly what they're doing. One member turns back early due to illness. That decision saves his life. He has no idea at the time how much it matters. The remaining 9 continue. They make their way up a slope near a mountain the local indigenous Mansi people call Kholat Syakhl. In their language, that name translates to something that, looking back, feels less like a coincidence and more like a warning. Dead Mountain. On the night of February 1st, a group sets up camp on the open slope itself, rather than descending to a more sheltered tree line just below them. A decision that later investigators find strange, since these were not careless hikers. Something about that slope, that night, made them choose to stop right there. It is the last decision any of them will make that we can actually explain. When the group doesn't check in by their expected return date, search parties are sent out. What they find over the following weeks becomes one of the strangest crime scenes in modern history. The tent is still standing on the slope, but it has been cut open from the inside. Not at the entrance, through the actual fabric of the tent wall. Footprints lead away from the tent, down toward the tree line more than a kilometer away. The footprints belong to people wearing socks, or in some cases, no footwear at all, in temperatures that drop to nearly minus 30 degrees Celsius at night. Why would 9 experienced winter hikers cut their way out of a stable shelter and run, half-dressed, into a freezing forest? The first bodies are found near the tree line, under a large cedar tree. Branches up to 5 meters high are broken, as though someone climbed desperately, trying to see something, or trying to escape something. There are remains of a small fire. It seems like at least some of them tried to regroup, tried to survive, and failed. 2 months later, when the snow finally melts enough to search deeper into a ravine nearby, the last 4 bodies are found. And this is where the story stops looking like hypothermia, and starts looking like something else entirely. Here is where most documentaries about Dyatlov Pass lose their nerve and just list theories without explaining why each piece of evidence is genuinely strange. Let's not do that. Let's go through exactly what investigators found. 6 of the 9 victims died from hypothermia. Tragic, but at least explainable, given the conditions. The other 3 did not die from cold. They died from severe physical trauma. 1 victim had major skull fractures. 2 others had massive chest fractures, the kind of injury, according to the original Soviet investigator, that's typically seen in high-speed car accidents. Except there was no vehicle, no road, and no cliff steep enough nearby to explain a fall producing that kind of force. None of these 3 had any external wounds on their skin to match the severity of the internal damage. No broken skin, no visible bruising pattern that would explain bones breaking like that. It's as if the force came from somewhere, but left almost no outside mark. 1 woman was missing her tongue, eyes, part of her lips, and some facial tissue. For years, this detail fueled wild theories. The far more grounded, if still unsettling, scientific explanation is decomposition in running water, since her body was the one found in the small stream at the bottom of the ravine. Water exposure over weeks can cause exactly this kind of tissue loss. Then there's the radiation. Some of the clothing recovered from the bodies tested positive for elevated levels of radioactivity. Soviet investigators at the time had a very mundane explanation involving thorium-coated lantern mantles used by some campers. But that explanation has never fully satisfied everyone who's looked closely at the case files. And here's the detail that turns this from really tragic accident into international mystery. Some of the surviving relatives reported, at the funerals, that several bodies had unusual skin discoloration, a strange orange-tan tone, one that didn't match ordinary frostbite or decomposition they had seen before. The original case file was closed by Soviet authorities with a single vague sentence, that the hikers died because of a compelling natural force. No specifics, no mechanism. Bayat, just a force. In a country that had at the time controlled almost every piece of information that left it, that kind of vague, unsatisfying conclusion raised more questions than it answered. So what actually happened on that slope? The leading scientific theory, formalized decades later using modeling techniques, involves a delayed slab avalanche. The idea is that a small, localized snowslide could hit the tent with enough force to cause the chest and skull injuries, without leaving the kind of surface damage you'd expect from a normal large avalanche, and without leaving obvious tracks, because the snow conditions on that exact slope made this kind of slide rare but possible. It's a reasonable explanation. It is also not universally accepted, partly because the slope's angle was considered too shallow by many experts for a typical avalanche, and partly because it doesn't fully explain why the group ran so far from the tent instead of simply digging out and staying nearby for safety, which is the standard, trained response to an avalanche. Then there are the less conventional theories. Some point to secret Soviet military testing in the area, citing the radiation findings and Cold War-era paranoia about new weapons. Others point to infrasound, wind flow over the rounded shape of the mountain, creating a kind of invisible, inaudible, panic-inducing vibration, a phenomenon that has at least some grounding in atmospheric science, even if it's never been proven in this specific case. And of course, there are theories involving something stranger still. Beata reports from other hikers in the region that same night, describing unusual lights in the sky. None of these theories has ever been definitively proven. Russian authorities reopened the investigation formally in 2019, 60 years after the incident, and in 2020 announced the avalanche theory as their official conclusion. Many of the original investigators and many independent researchers still aren't fully convinced. Here's what actually stays with me about this story more than the mystery itself. 9 people, who were genuinely good at staying alive in dangerous conditions, made a decision in their final hours that looked, from the outside, like panic. Cutting open their own shelter. Running without shoes into a forest at night, in temperatures that kill in under an hour. We want stories like this to have a villain, or a monster, or a weapon, because those things are at least understandable. A wild animal, we can picture. A government cover-up, we can picture. What's much harder to sit with is the idea that something can happen that simply has no clean explanation. That the universe doesn't owe us a tidy answer just because we need one. And maybe that's the real fear at the center of this story. Not the mountain. Not the injuries. It's the discomfort of not knowing. Human beings are remarkably good at surviving physical danger when we understand it. We are far less equipped to sit with genuine uncertainty. So here's the question worth carrying with you after this video ends. How much of what scares us in life isn't actually the danger itself, but simply our own inability to explain it? The mountain never changed its name back from what the Mansi called it, all those centuries ago. Dead Mountain. Maybe some places and some stories are never meant to give us a complete answer. We just have to learn to live with the not knowing.